Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the final episode for, that says Season 3, it should not. This is Season 4. Yeah. This is the final episode of our Season 4. We had a bit of a rough season, obviously. We ended 3-7, which is very far from where we wanted to be, which is playoffs. It's been unfortunate, but we did have some good plays. Most of our losses were just very close losses, and it just happened down to a couple of misplays or whatnot. So I'm not entirely upset. I wish we could have done better, but I still think we did a fine job. Hopefully the next season we participate in, it will be a bit different, but we will see. But for now, I'm going to go through my squad. We're going to go through each mon, talk about what I think they did well, what I think they did poorly in, and kind of my overall sort of opinion on each Pokemon. So we'll have to see. And we'll be going in the order that we drafted in. Obviously, for any Pokemon we traded in, we will just be putting them in the old Pokemon's place. So first off, we're going to kick it off with our Heatran. 3 kills, 7 deaths, 7 games played. Overall, you can probably think that Heatran kind of sucked. But honestly, I think Heatran did alright. It was a good wall for a lot of powerful fairy types who we had problems against. It was a strong rock setter. It had good access to some utility that we could use, such as burns and as other things. It honestly served its main purpose well, which was being a good fairy counter to Megasolo, or fairy counter for Megasolo, and it played its role well. Having Flash Fire made it good against the new fairy types who just got access to Mystical Fire. My only main problems with Heatran is that its speed is really slow. I don't know why, but when I thought Heatran was faster because I knew it was run offensive a lot. But it turns out it's actually pretty slow, coming in at 77 speed. So it was I think it was one of the slower mons I had on my team. So its speed kind of held it down and made me run it more defensively most weeks. But like I said, if its main purpose was just to counter strong fairy types, and it did that well. So that's a big part in there, and then having utility was an extra part. Just offensively, it wasn't really where I want to run it. So I gave it a 7 because I thought it was good for what it needed to be, but for most other areas it kind of flopped a bit. So yeah, we'll give it an average. Or I guess it's not average, it's above average. Because average would be a 5. Then everything lower is less than average, everything above is greater than average. Speaking of less than average, hi Megasolo. 2 kills, 8 deaths, 8 games played. I don't know whether it was the way I was using Megasolo or just because I built up my expectations for it, but I just feel like Megasolo kind of underperformed throughout the entirety of the season. Most weeks that we brought it, it mostly just sat there, took a few hits, and then went down pretty quickly. It didn't really get that defensive utility I really wanted out of the Pokemon. Like I said, that could have been the way I was running it or the way that I used it in my plays. But I just don't think it really served that purpose that I wanted it there for. It just kind of fumbled in the areas I needed it most. It did have some good utility. We were able to use it a couple times effectively, and Shadow Sneak netted us 1 or 2 some useful kills, but otherwise I think it just underperformed a bit. And like I said, that might have just been because I expected it to do a lot more, but I feel like it probably should have done at least a little bit more. But that could just be me. So I'm ranking it just under average just because the way I feel. Because also, I had a lot of people tell me that Megasolo is a difficult Pokemon to use because even though it can be a good wall, a decent fairy or a decent something else can easily wall it out pretty well. So I guess I should have been more careful of that, but we know now. So yeah, we'll move on to a Pokemon who's a bit more appreciative, which is Haxorous. 3 kills, 4 deaths with 5 games played. Honestly, it's entirely my fault that Haxorous went negative. Because there are a lot of weeks where if you go back and you listen to me talking to the other coaches in my interviews, a lot of them you'll hear, oh, why didn't you bring Haxorous? Which is a good question. Because Haxorous definitely should have come more and should have been much more of an offensive threat. Because there are a lot of weeks where just a little bit of setup could have easily had Haxorous sweeping through an entire team. So honestly, it's entirely my fault. I did not bring Haxorous enough as I should have. If I was thinking properly, I could have brought it more and I could have absolutely tore through some of my opponents. Even without setup, just raw Haxorous can easily just demolish a lot of teams. I just never really brought it for that purpose, which is kind of stupid on my part, because that's all that Haxorous really does, is it just comes in, it breaks walls, and it sweeps through teams. So, but for the times that I needed Haxorous, it really pulled out. Obviously, it's a big offensive threat. It scares a lot of our opponents. It has good coverage. So I'm giving it a 9. It's not perfect, but that's just because mostly the way I played around with it. But I really liked Haxorous. I definitely pick it up again and use it more, like it's supposed to be used. So yeah, don't blame Haxorous for its poor season. Blame me. Haxorous is a great mon. On the other end of the spectrum, we have Creamy. 1 kill, 3 deaths, only 3 games played, which is kind of crazy to see that my main and only fairy on this team was only brought for 3 games. Even last season when I had Rabombi, I think Rabombi at least made it to half the games. So having a fairy type that only made it 3 games is kind of scary. But that's mostly because Creamy is a very niche fairy. Originally, as you remember, I wanted Sylveon for this position, because it had a slightly better speed tier and it could be used as a cleric with Heal Bell and Wish. Instead, we picked up Creamy, who's more of a defensive with Recover and just kind of keeping itself healthy. It's also a tricky Pokemon to use because the way that you have to play with Creamy is different than most other fairies who play support, and for Creamy you basically have to play a wall. So it's a bit different, especially since a lot of dragons now are running poison moves. It easily gets beaten through. So honestly, I think Creamy kind of underperformed. Like I said, I would have rather had Sylveon or Florges, but they were both taken before I could grab them. So we were kind of left with Creamy. It only got 1 kill and it only came 3 games, like I said, is a bit scary. Honestly, looking at it now, I might even rate it a little bit lower. I may put it at a 3 instead of a 4. But that's just something we'll go back and look at after. But yeah, I just think Creamy is very niche. Can't really serve the purpose that most other fairy types can and would want to serve. And it just kind of underperformed. Back on the other end of the spectrum. We just keep ping-ponging back and forth from bad Pokemon to good Pokemon. We have Crobat. 5-3, which 5 games played. Which is, I think this is the first Pokemon through our team that we've seen that is positive, which is kind of scary to look at again. But honestly, Crobat's really good. I kind of underestimated Crobat when I first drafted it because it was a lower tier, but having that base 130 speed tier and being able to do offensive things with a Pokemon like that is very good, especially because with Crobat, you can run both physical and special. Even though Crobat is more physical, it does get access to Nasty Plot setup, which we used once in our matches against... Actually, we used it a couple times, didn't we? But yeah. Crobat's utility is something that I really underestimated. Being that fast, having that pivot ability can really scare some things out. Plus, it's able to serve as a good wall because it is bulky. You can throw Black Sludge and it gets a roost. Is able to be good wall for Pokemon like Mega Beedrill, who we walled out well. So yeah, I was actually really impressed with Crobat. I put it at a 9, same tier as Haxorous. Honestly, I think Crobat is kind of a nice steal, being only a tier 3, which saves you a lot of time and lets you grab some better tier 2s and tier 1s. But yeah, the 130 speed tier is awesome, has good coverage, has setup, has utility, has all the good stuff. So honestly, I really enjoyed Crobat this season. I would definitely draft it again. Next up, we have Chestnut. 3-5, 6 games played. Chestnut, originally during the start of the season, I was a bit skeptical about Chestnut. I just felt that for some reason it wasn't really putting forth what I wanted it to put forth. It did do some good work game 1, but then the next 2 games we kind of fumbled and I was kind of worried. But then I think back-to-back games it was proving a key player against people like Aerothorn, where Terrakion or other Pokemon could easily beat us, but Chestnut held them at bay. So I think Chestnut really served its purpose later in the game. It's a very defensive wall. It's a nice grass type to help with some of the tougher types to put down. It's got those fighting moves. Tons of recovery options, including Synthesis, Drain Punch, and Leech Seed. It's good at utility because it has spikes, it has Spiky Shield, it has Leech Seed like we said before. It has tons of offensive moves. I think Chestnut honestly is a really good Pokemon. It might be a bit tough to use because normally people would like their fighting types either a lot faster or with some sort of priority move, which Chestnut has neither of those because it's very slow and has 0 priority. But I think it served its purpose rather well. I gave it a nice 7 out of 10, same as Heatran, because it did pretty good. Like I said, there are some weeks where I felt it kind of lacked, but then there are other weeks where I felt it did really well. So it's just a matter of playing around and seeing what we did. Next up, we have Seismitoad. So as you know, this used to be Quag's spot. Shout out Quag in the back. I had to put him in there because of the absolute work he did week 1. But afterwards, we picked up Seismitoad. 4 kills, 7 deaths, 7 games played. Honestly, Seismitoad was a very key player on this team. As you can see, we picked it up during week 3. So that means it came all but 1 week that we had the Pokemon, so it was definitely a key player. It was a great wall. I realize now that having my ground type with rocks is something I definitely need to look out for next season. Having Water Absorb made it a great counter to water types. It had some interesting coverage moves. I would be able to run it offensive if I really wanted to, but its main role is a defensive wall, which it serves very, very well. Water ground is such a defensive typing, and there are so many water ground types that are super good at being defensive, like Quagsire and Swampert. So yeah, I think it served its purpose really well. Honestly, I went as far as to, because we do suggestions for each season, I went as far as to say next season maybe consider bringing Seismitoad up a tier, because I feel like, because Pokemon like Swampert is also in tier 3, so I feel like Seismitoad is honestly probably on the same level as Swampert because they both defensive water types that have access to rocks. But yeah, I think Seismitoad was a very key player. It came almost every week that we had it. So yeah, I'm giving it an 8 because Seismitoad was just that much of a key player in our team. Next up, we have Cryo. 3-2. 3 differential. I lower Cryo's rating because obviously we only brought it 3 games, but it is one of our few positive mons, so that's something good to look at. Cryo's interesting because if Cryo is used effectively as a hazard removal, it can be very good because the high speed has access to rapid spin or defog depending on what you want to use, and ice is a very niche typing. Honestly, it has very weak defenses, but because Cryo is so fast, it can use that against it. Plus, having access to Water Pulse can make it good for fire types who try to catch it off guard. Only problem is basically anything that's like a steel type or anything that's like a fighting type or something that resists ice basically destroys Cryo, because all Cryo has is ice and Water Pulse, and that's not a big move pool. So any good steel type can easily break down Cryo. It's very interesting to see. So I think I might bring Cryo down maybe to like a 5 even. Just say it's average. I don't know why I rated it so high in the first place, but I'd say it's more like a 5. It's a nice Pokemon to have for utility because of its speed and because Ice is a type that you don't usually pick up often. But it's just not a Pokemon that you can use too many times. Like, we only brought it to 3 games. That's not a lot of games. That's only 30% of our games, which is not a lot. So good Pokemon, but very niche as well. Next up, we have Electabuzz. 1 kill, 4 deaths, 4 games played. Electabuzz kind of stumped me. Originally, I had wanted the faster Raichu, but Raichu was stolen, so I was able to get Electabuzz instead. I thought Electabuzz could be more useful because Eviolite is a good thing to have to boost defenses, and then it had lots of interesting coverage on both sides of the attacking, both physical and special. But when it came down to it, as you can see, Electabuzz kind of underperformed in most areas. I think I would have rather had the faster Raichu because it would have helped me for a lot of faster threats who I would have liked electric moves for. But we got. It kind of underperformed. I put it on the same tier as Alolan Creamy and Sableye. So yeah, it's just kind of underperforming. I guess I was kind of expecting too much out of a tier 5, but I don't know. I just think it kind of went under what I wanted it to. On the complete other end of the spectrum, we have the king of our team, Azelf. 10 kills, 5 deaths. Able to secure a top 10 spot in the kill leaderboards. Azelf is kind of crazy. I didn't really expect much from Azelf, but after picking it and after using it for the whole season, it just absolutely tore through a lot of teams. Having the 115 base speed and having ability to choose either physical, special, or mixed set with setup on both sides, plus all of the utility like stealth rocks, poisoning, and other things you can use. Honestly, Azelf is an amazing Pokemon. I loved Azelf. Originally, I was thinking between Azelf or Exam, but I wanted to do Azelf because it had a bit more utility and a bit more choice because Exam is all special, but Azelf could be either. So if I think there's a good special wall coming in that's going to try and stop me, I can go physical. And Azelf served its purpose tremendously. By far our highest kills on our team, led the charge offensively, carried us through a lot of tough games, able to take some incredible kills that we needed it to in some pretty tricky weeks. So yeah, Azelf is just an amazing player. I loved Azelf. I would definitely 100% draft him again. Next up, we have Porygon Z. 2-1, 2 games played. I hardly touched BZ. I used Alolan Creamy and I even used Electabuzz more than I used PZ. Honestly, when I drafted PZ, I thought it was a lot faster. I thought PZ was base 100 speed max or min, and it was like 90 or 80, so it's kind of slower than what I thought it was. But it came 2 weeks, it got 2 kills, so it did some work. Having that utility of being a normal type with all those special moves at your disposal is pretty cool. Honestly, it might just be the fact that I used it less that I didn't get much out of it, so I might even move it up to a 5. Because I don't think it underperformed. I just think I didn't use it as much as I should have. But it served somewhat of a purpose. It got 2 kills in 2 games. So it's like 1 kill each game came. So that's not bad. So yeah, it has a good move pool. It's a little bit slower than I thought, but it was still speedy enough. And it has some utility with things like Nasty Plot. And if you get an extra download boost, that would be also good. So yeah, I'd say PZ is more like a 5. Instead of a 4, because it's just kind of average, mostly because I only used it twice. So we'll see. Finally, we have our Escavalier. 5 kills, 4 deaths, and 5 games played. I'm actually very surprised with Escavalier. Originally in this spot we had Illumise because I wanted Prankster Defog for extra hazard removal. But then there was realization that I had kind of a weakness to other fairy types. So I decided to pick up Escavalier as a savior for that. And honestly, it really helped me on my physical spectrum. It does a lot of damage. Even though it's only base 20 speed, it does incredible amounts of damage. It was able to come in clutch for a lot of weeks where we really needed it. the physical power of Escavalier is super scary, especially if it has something like a Choice Band, because clicking things like Choice Band Iron Head or Choice Band Knockoff can really do some damage, especially because Escavalier has such high physical attack. Plus, it's able to be rather defensive as a wall. It was able to come in, wall some things that most other Pokemon couldn't really wall out, and then scare it out so I could damage something else. It had tons of coverage. It was an absolute powerhouse on my offensive side, which is something I was very lacking in. So yeah, Escavalier honestly really surprised me, which is why I put it just under Haxorous, but above Pokemon like Chestnut. I think it's on the same tier as Toad. Yeah. Same tier as Seismitoad. So that's pretty good. It's honestly very surprising and a very good pick for a tier 4. That's what you are. Next up, notes for next season. Obviously, this is just a joking page. My big problem with this season, obviously, was that I drafted a lot of defensive and utility options, but not a lot of offensive options. I think my only offensive options were Haxorous, Escavalier, PZ, and Azelf, and everything else was utility. So, honestly, only having 4 offensive in a team of 12 is kind of hurtful. Normally, you'd want more offense than you have defense. So, I think I drafted way too defensive this season. I think I definitely should have drafted more offense, now that I'm looking at it again. But it's something you learn. So, next season that we participate in, we will be drafting a little bit more offense. I'm going to be playing around a bit, figuring out some new Pokemon I want to try, some good offense, some good defense, get some better offense in there. Try to play less my style and start breaking out into a new style and try to mix it up a bit. But yeah, that is all for this. I was trying to make this just a quick one. I didn't want to make this another 1 hour of me mumbling and groaning through all of my Pokemon. I tried to speed it up a bit. So if there's some parts that you are a bit confused by, I apologize, but I was just trying to get through this quickly so I could pump this out. But I hope you enjoyed the season. Hopefully we will be back in the next season and we will do much better. But until then, I have been Monotone Excitement. Have a good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever time you're watching this, and goodbye.